By stacking thirds on top of each other or taking one note every two, you can create chords. But you don't have to stop at a triad with 3 notes. You can add more. When you add more notes to your triad, you're creating an extended chord. If you add one extra note, you add the 7th, so that's a 7th chord. If you add another extra note, you add the 9th, so that's a 9th chord. Another extra note and you're adding an 11th, so that's called an 11th chord. Another extra note and you're adding a 13th note, so that's called a 13th chord. You get it. If I try to make a 13th chord from C in the C major scale, that makes C, E, G, B, D, F, A. So technically this is the 13th chord. Yeah. Again, the nature of these extended chords will depend on the interval between each of their notes. So let's define all these intervals once and for all. Every interval is defined by the distance between a note of the chord and the root note. Some intervals will be called perfects. If they are extended by a semitone, they are called augmented, and if they are shortened by a semitone, they are called diminished. Then some intervals are called either major or minor, with a semitone between the two states. If a major interval is extended by one semitone, it becomes augmented, and if a minor interval is shortened by one semitone, it becomes diminished. But these are more rare instances. To know which intervals are perfect or major or minor, just remember the C major scale, as everything seems to be built around that. That's all the white key on the keyboard. In the C major scale, the 4th and the 5th are perfect intervals, and the 2nd, the 3rd, the 6th and the 7th are all major intervals. From there, it gives you all the reference intervals you need to know if your 6th or 7th is minor or major. For example, if you have 4 tones between 2 notes, that's like the interval between a C and a G sharp or A flat. So that's an interval of either an augmented 5th or a minor 6th. For the 7th, it is a major 7th if the note is 5 tones and a half above the root note. That's a semitone below its octave. Or if it is 2 tones above the perfect 5th. It becomes a minor 7th if it's a whole tone below the root note, or 1 tone and a half above the perfect 5th. We can also observe that the major chords in these scales are built upon the perfect intervals, and the minor or diminished chords are built upon the non-perfect intervals. This figure can come in very handy as a reference, and it should definitely be on the cheat sheet if you need one. So now that we know how to build a 7th chord by adding a 7th on top of a triad, and we know how we can identify different intervals, let's see the most used 7th chord. A major triad with a minor 7th, which would be a minor 3rd above the 5th, is probably the most common 7th chord and is called a dominant 7th chord, because it is often used on the 5th degree, which is the dominant degree. For a C chord, they will make C, E, G, B flat, and it would be noted C7. If we have a major triad with a major 7th, they would make a major 7th chord. So for C, they would make C, E, G, B, and it would be noted C capital M7. Then if we have a minor triad plus a minor 7th, that makes a minor 7th chord. So for a C chord, there would be C, E flat, G, B flat. They would be noted C lowercase m 7. You can also have a minor triad with a major 7th. That would be a minor major 7th chord. That would make, for instance, C, E flat, G, B. That would be noted C lowercase m capital M7. This one is a bit more rare. Then we can have a diminished triad with a minor 7th. That'd be called a half diminished 7th chord. So for example, C, E flat, G flat, B flat. That would be noted C lowercase m7 flat 5. Or like this, a C with a crossed circle. That's a half diminished 7th chord. And to have a fully diminished 7th chord, there would be a diminished triad with a diminished 7th. So for C, it would be C, E flat, G flat, B double flat. I like this one because it's a bit confusing. Even though the B technically becomes the same note than an A, it still serves the function of a 7th, and we stack up minor thirds on top of each other to make this one. But A would be a 6th, so we keep the name B for that note to show that it's considered a 7th, but it's double flat, it's diminished. So the C diminished 7th chord could be noted C dim 7. This one is very dissonant as it has 2 intervals of diminished 5th in it. I like it a lot. Now with an augmented triad we can have a minor 7th. That would be called an augmented 7th chord. So on a C chord, that would be C, E, G sharp, B flat. This one is sort of a break in the rule, as it doesn't have an interval of a 3rd between the 5th and the 7th. This chord is also used a lot on chords of 5th degree, and is also known as a dominant augmented 7th chord, and that denoted C+7. With an augmented triad, we can have a major 7th. That would be called an augmented major 7th chord. So on a C chord, that would be C, E, G sharp, B, and that denoted C capital M7 sharp 5, or C plus capital M7. Now that we know what the different 7th chords look like, we can identify each 7th chord of our C major scale. If we take each note of the scale and build the 7th chord, so remember you start with the root notes and then you take one note every two, so leave a note, take a note, leave a note, take a note, and see the intervals that compose them, we find that the C chord, the first degree, is the C major 7th, the second degree is the D minor 7th, the third degree is the E minor 7th, the fourth degree is the F major 7th, the fifth degree is a G dominant 7th, the sixth degree is a A minor 7th, and the seventh degree is a B half diminished 7th. This gives you the states of all the 7th chord in a major scale, and because all major scales have a relative minor scale that use the exact same notes, you can have the 7th chord of a minor scale by simply starting from the 6th degree, because that's where a relative minor scale begins. So these are the 7th chord of a minor scale. You can add other notes on top of that to create 9th, 11th or 13th chord, but that may already be a lot of information. I would like to talk a bit about how to actually use this chord to create our chord progression first. So if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe and hit the bell button if you don't want to miss the next one. In the meantime, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.